Just that problem statement alone should be attractive enough for all the smart folks to leave everything what they're doing and start building PropTech. We have just crossed 100 million revenue.
In my world, ideally this should be like the big headlines. Nobody has taken out any money, 20 founders.
With all respect to the work-life balance, if you don't want to go out for drinks with people you work with, you're working with the wrong team. We are a 20 co-founder team. None of us have quit. None of us have any side hustle. Each one of us wake up every single day wanting to build a $100 billion organization. When we meet potential founders, our immediate thought process is ki, can we marry them for the next 20 years? Real estate demand nahi hai, real estate demand nahi hai. We have been shouting from the rooftops that India has not been a demand issue at all. India has never been a demand issue. There is enough demand for the rightly priced, rightly positioned inventory. India is a supply issue. 40 of senior people took personal loans individually, all of us, to ensure the entire organization gets paid on time.
Phenomenal.
I've read probably 8 out of 10 times, don't work with friends, don't work with spouses. I have a totally antithesis argument to that.
In India, we celebrate about digital connectivity, broadband. It's good, right? If you're so much aware because of connectivity, then raise the real issue. Like, housing is the biggest issue. Right? You should be raising it, but the issues we raise on social media and connectivity are about onion prices. It's not about housing prices or lack of availability, right?
Star CVs historically haven't worked for us. You're right. We need humble people. Even today, if let's say someone writes me a 100 million check, I'll refuse. I don't know what to do with 100 million. Why dilute? The fact is that there are 100 million homes which need to be built in India. 20-25 years. If they don't get built, there will be a civil war. We told ourselves, yeah, our business cannot be built on large deals. हमें डेली का कुआं खोदना है, डेली का पानी पीना है.
Welcome, Tanuj. Such a pleasure and privilege. I'm feeling very proud to introduce a fellow IIM Lucknow alumni.
Thank you.
Tanuj, we rarely hear about Squareyards. If at all, I would have probably read a press release about the revenues you've done. That's all we've seen.
I don't know, good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, but that's all, right? Never in news apart from like fundraising or any of these things. It's sort of, build under the hood for a long time. Tell us how big Squareyards is and what is the extent of the business today.
So extending onto that, we have internally believed it has worked for us being under the radar. Part of the reason being we are operating in a fairly large industry, and our thesis has been that a lot of young entrepreneurs follow capital. So in our space, in PropTech space per se, there has been a lack of scalable startups, PropTech unicorns per se. So we believe we have been lucky in the last few years that a lot of smart young entrepreneurs haven't taken time out from the fintechs and the edtech and started building PropTech. It will happen. So we keep telling ourselves, yaar, jab tak delay kar sakte hain, karte raho.
You don't want people to discover this space again. We'll be
discovered eventually, but till the time we can. But jokes apart, coming back to the thing, so we have just crossed 100 million revenue, trailing 12 months revenue. Important because we
saw that.
Right from the beginning, we have tried validating ourselves on this metric rather than the valuation, rather than the GMVs and the GTVs. Hardcore economics, what we are trying to build, how we have been able to do it, how we are scaling. In an ideal world, our metric should be 100 million profits, not 100 million revenue, and hopefully soon we'll get there. Right. But to put numbers into context, we are close to 5 billion transaction value. We don't speak about much. That's fairly large. We are looking at crossing 1,000 crore milestone revenue this year.
Wow.
More importantly, profitable at the corporate level.
Phenomenal. Tell us little bit about lines of business you have.
So, in simple words, and that's what I always say, the elevator pitch per se, we are pretty much the only player in this entire space who is tackling the entire full stack ecosystem of the consumer home buying journey. Okay. So everyone
full stack consumer home buying journey.
So in simple 4-line words, so effectively right from the search and discovery, that is where most of our competition ends. Moving on to the helping consumer, hand-holding the consumer through the real estate transaction space, which is when we go and compete with a lot of offline guys. Heading on to the mortgage, the consumer needs a mortgage, how do we solve for that issue? Now there are a lot of disruption in India has happened on the unsecured side, but not on the secured side. So we do have some sort of a lever there, specifically building onto the captive audience of the real estate. And And over the last couple of years, we have invested in the last mile connectivity, which is home renovations, property management,
Post-purchase.
post-purchase, closer to the possession when the consumer gets to the ownership of the house. Uh, Four large B2C segments, like I said, real estate, mortgage, home renovation, and property management. But underlying that, last 18 months, we have been very aggressively building the B2B space, working very, very closely with stakeholders like real estate developers, lending institutions, small property brokers, mortgage brokers, providing them SaaS platforms, virtual reality solutions, digitizing a lot of solutions on the lending side like title search, evaluation, so on and so forth.
Okay. And these are like because now you're large enough to support these separate verticals.
So apart from home renovations, we are category leaders in pretty much every segment. Every segment in India. I love throwing the word category leader, ego boost for us, but the humble truth is we are less than 1.5% market share in every segment.
It's a very unorganized market.
It's a very unorganized market, totally fragmented market. Even if you include semi-organized player, all these segments, the entire semi-organized market would be barely 5-7% of the overall market.
I know, it's phenomenal. And we've had attempts to organize this market for last 20 years now, right? And we are still at 5% only. Right? Phenomenal.
So, and this is the most common question I'm asked, that what did you do differently which no one else did? Why XY, without taking names, and XY peers could not scale up to this level? Our thesis is that I think the industry approached the problem in a wrong way. So A, obviously what the industry was trying to do. B, industry did not stick to it for long enough. So a lot of, partly it is about patience as well.
People pivoted too early to prove other things.
So the advantage we had, so we started in 2014. Pretty much all the incumbents you hear of had started before that.
Tired, exhausted.
We had the advantage of knowing what people had done, what worked, what didn't work. But more importantly, I think where Indian players lagged, they did not bring in a global perspective. So I used to cover, in my pre-Squareyards days, I used to cover China consumer. So I used to be in China very often. There is a player in China called Lianjia. Very similar to what, we are very similar to what they are building. And in 2012-13, they had 50% market share of Shanghai and Beijing.
Wow.
Again, intermediary platform, playing the entire consumer home buying journey, right from the search and discovery to home transaction, to mortgage, to home renovation. Today, fast forward to today, they are 26% market share of entire China. So every fourth transaction in real estate in China happens through their platform.
Wow.
Close to $13-14 billion revenue. And they have obviously gone through the curve with the China housing
crisis. That is some serious monopoly.
So you looked, and we looked at that very, very closely. And we looked at so we looked at them. We looked at what Zillow is trying to do in US, what REA did in Australia. Some things very similar to what Indian players had tried. But
they were hoping to get there.
A lot of things different from these players were doing. And I think the myopic view in India was, let's build a classified portal.
The assumption was that people, that's all they care about. They want to do everything offline after that.
But the search and discovery is only 5% of the value chain. It is one of those unique sectors and segments where after search and discovery, the real consumer experience starts. So you have solved for discovery, but after that what? So the consumer is not tied to one of these portals, because the consumer journey is still being influenced by what's happening in the offline space, on the transaction space. And funnily enough, I think, and I am still amazed, it is not spoken about that much across sectors. It has been virtually impossible for any search and discovery place to make money in any emerging market.
That's true.
It's not just India. It's not just real estate. It's not just autos. Everywhere. And there are multi reasons for that. The propensity of intermediary to pay, propensity of a consumer to pay, for that matter. So it has worked. So over a period of time at scale, it has worked in the global markets, but it has not worked in the emerging markets.
Also, the view that some of the Silicon Valley culture startups take, that you should have very high revenue per employee, should not be manpower intensive. But you've taken a different view. How many employees do you have right now?
7,500.
7,000. So you're not saying that I will replace people with technology. You're saying, okay, I will give a digital experience, but I will keep people with people.
And make it more efficient, make it more seamless. We solve for basically the consumer needs. So again, I'm not saying that a lot of things will not be digitized in 5 years. So value chain, let's say 10 years back was 20% digitized, today is 60% digitized. And it continues to get more digitized every year. So our thesis is we should be at the forefront of the tech disruption what is happening in the space. Not every time that tech disruption will make us money. We don't want to have a Nokia moment at any point in time. We do not want that suddenly sector में कुछ हो गया जो हमें पता भी नहीं चला and someone raced ahead. But so there is an internal. So there are two Squareyards effectively. There is one digital Squareyards which continues to innovate, like a Google Labs. Basically, we have filed for 18 patents. We have been granted 4 patents. A lot of things don't make money for us today. But these are all building for optionality values in the future as and when the landscape changes, the regulatory landscape changes. But then there is another Squareyards, which is a very execution based, in sync with the reality of the market. कि यार एक independent, तो हमारा एक favorite quote था, an average real estate broker is one of the oldest professions in the world. It is a cash flow positive guy without having marketing dollars, without having tech ecosystem. So if we are building a large organized space, we have to be more efficient than him. And so whatever we have tried to do in terms of marrying these ecosystems together, categories together, building network effect, has been able to ensure कि are we doing things 30%, 40% more efficient than these guys. We have never told ourselves कि यार industry में intermediary रहेगा ही नहीं. We don't know रहेगा नहीं रहेगा. I think we are nowhere to comment on
I
that.
like this revenue per employee benchmark, where you have to keep your revenue per employee benchmark to the traditional industry, right? So you have to be 2x, 3x efficient on a revenue per employee compared to what is the current way of doing things. That's a good benchmark to get started.
And not so. I think again. So a lot of people talk about Zillow in US being a gold standard. Actually, Zillow's revenue is 2% of the entire intermediary revenue pool in US.
Right, true.
आज भी 98% of the transactions in US involve a broker. So no one has been able to disintermediate them. So you can't be close to the reality of how money is being made in the industry, and that revenue gives you enough tools and enough power to innovate.
Yeah, I think companies like Zillow probably, overpowered all other thinking process in India. I think everybody says, okay, this be just like that, and that's all. We'll not go beyond that.
And funnily enough, Zillow changed 3 years back.
I know.
So
So
I think Zillow realized, suddenly woke up to the reality. Good thing कि यार सिर्फ search and discovery classified has a glass ceiling. Will not be able to continuously, again, monopoly. So you have a 80% market share. How far you could grow. So then they looked at the transaction pie.
How deeper
that is a $150 billion pie we are not targeting.
Now they're thinking, how deeper can we go?
And that's
like after so many years of existence, they are now changing.
It's becoming a classic case study for every classified portal globally of what will happen to the ecosystem 10 years later.
No, it's good to know. Tanuj, I know that you're very smart to build below the radar, but we want younger founders to get some inputs from you on how to actually enter, right? I'm sure they will not want to compete with you now. We already told them how big
they should.
But still, like you said, the market is not organized at all. Yet it's a very large opportunity. We were speaking about all Indians need housing. The government is building infrastructure. Banks are willing to give money, but somebody has to build the houses, right? And it's probably one of the biggest opportunity, biggest part of the economy. And I'd say that in terms of mindshare as a investor or as a founder, probably the smallest vertical, right? So people, there are probably 10x more entrepreneurs building cosmetic brands
than they are trying to get into property.
Just amazing to see that such a lopsided ratio there. It's such a tyranny of, and this is something that everybody feels. So it's not even like, okay, I don't know this problem. You see and you live in this problem every day. So what do you think is the opportunity here? And what do you think is the block?
So one of the quotes in one of our offices is, I'm deleting the Squareyards part, just want to sound arrogant, is the largest sector in one of the largest economies in the world.
It is.
Last frontier, which has not been disrupted. Urbanization, everyone talks about urbanization. I think the entire consumer tech ecosystem success is dependent on urbanization playing through. If urbanization does play through, 33% going to 50%.
All last mile delivery basically needs a house to deliver to, right?
So you're talking about essentially the entire US population moving to cities.
Yes.
In the next 15, 20, anybody's guess, whether it'll take 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, but 400 million people moving to cities. You assume a family of 4, you're talking about 100 million homes. We are not talking about कि price कितना ऊपर जाएगा नहीं जाएगा, but the fact is कि there are 100 million homes which need to be built in India. 20-25 years. नहीं, if they don't get built, there will be a civil war. Make a guess how many houses India builds in a year.
I'm hoping they're building enough, but I think
That number.
like maybe 50 million a year.
What?
1 million.
Out of that organized top 15 cities is 500,000.
That's all.
US being at 80% urbanization builds more houses than India.
You're talking about the organized market is only
1 million is including organized, unorganized, everything.
Self-construction also.
So when China went through their own housing urbanization peak in 2000 to 2020, was building 1 million a month.
Wow.
So 10 to 15 million a year.
And we need to build
1
or 2 million, 100 million a year.
So 100 million, not a year,
over
but
20
over
years.
than 20 years, let's say.
So we need to build like 5 million a year. Wow. We need to like 10x the construction.
So just that problem statement alone should be attractive enough for all the smart folks to leave everything what they're doing and start building prop tech.
So Tanuj, will it be like a D2C brand of housing? Like for example, like see the e-commerce vertical came and they also discovered there are not enough brands to sell in India. You, I'm sure, face a problem. You are a marketplace. You would love to have a lot of brands because makes your job of selling standardized homes easier.
Exactly.
Right? We haven't seen a single D2C brand come in, for example. So many other models like fractional ownership, even open door, people have made attempts, but वो playing at the fringes पे है, मतलब थोड़ा सा material supply कर दो.
I think we are at that perfect cross section or unfortunate cross section of regulatory landscape, lot of physical infrastructure involved. It cannot be just a pure tech solution. Let's say the physical infrastructure is also involved. So that creates its own issues. No one who is getting into the sector can have a myopic view of what I'm going to do in the next 3 to 5 years. This problem is going to take a couple of decades to solve.
It will.
So I don't know how.
I like the point you made about the civil war, for example. Right? I mean, like it's such a shame that we in India we celebrate about digital connectivity, broadband. It's good, right? If you're so much aware because of connectivity, then raise the real issue. Right? Housing is the biggest issue. Right? You should be raising it. But the issues we raise on social media and connectivity are about onion prices, not about housing prices or lack of availability. Right? The biggest problem is petrol price. Okay, dude, can't do anything. There's nothing to do about that. Onion prices definitely can't do anything. But housing is something that actually, if you build pressure on the authorities and the governments, local and national both, you could do something.
Exactly. So, and we are making the right. Government is also making the right noises. But the entire ecosystem is not coming together.
Urgent. And you're saying that it will be bursting at seams. Where do you think it will, what are the directions it can explode into?
So,
if you were
like
to
for example, smart city concept. We never, I think the entire ecosystem never, including the regulatory authority, never dwelled deep into it. Now, for India to build 100 million homes cannot happen in a Bangalore plus Mumbai plus Delhi. It has to be at least 50 cities. For 50 cities to build that kind of a housing, there has to be a commercial activity in those cities. Residential moves around commercial. You can't be having 5 million people living in a city with effectively
industry hubs.
Industry hubs. Infra, I think what we have seen in infra in the last 10 years has been tremendous. I think that is unparalleled.
Phenomenal.
And that is the first basic stepping stone of what will happen.
So the infra has reached, but the cities have to be plotted now.
Exactly.
And you think startups can play a role there?
Should play a role in that. Should play a significant role.
Phenomenal. Let's not go into specifics. I just like this broad thought. I think let people think about what.
In fact, just to end this argument here, we founders put together, we are surprised that why people are. So we always used to tell ourselves, यार हमें कुछ ऐसा दिख रहा है जो industry को नहीं दिख रहा, or why are we doing something stupid? It seems like a very logical sector, logical problem, logical solution to these problems. Why is not everyone excited around the world towards them?
No, Tanuj, I'm excited, but again, like you said, that the baggage that we've had in real estate startups has been so bad, unfortunately. And I think probably the same baggage is playing in the mind of the founders also. And we need to think beyond this capturing a slice of the transaction, classifieds. We need to go beyond that, or maybe a little bit of do a little bit of fintech intervention at the fringes. We need to go beyond that. We need to go deep. Some companies have come recently. Tanuj, Okay, let's just go to the house construction. You said housing is the biggest problem India will have, biggest opportunity. Just for the knowledge of our startup audience, can you explain a little bit about the economics of a small housing project, small or large housing project, broadly?
So in fact, the starting point there, and when we spoke about ecosystem, one big chunk of the ecosystems are the manufacturers.
They're the builders.
India, obviously, everyone is excited about the India housing cycle today, but a lot of these people have also lived through the bear cycle of 2012 to 2020, and everyone kept talking about कि यार real estate demand नहीं है, real estate demand नहीं है. We have been shouting from the rooftops that India has not been a demand issue at all. India has never been a demand issue.
Yeah.
There is enough demand for the rightly priced, rightly positioned inventory, and exactly what your point comes in. India is a supply issue. India has been a supply
Of course,
issue.
a supply issue.
The problem being Indian developers have not been able to take a step back and look at the entire opportunity from the project management mindset. You come in, you make 15% margin, it's a factory output, you complete the project in 2 years, 3 years, move on, build the next project.
Yeah.
Indian developers are still struggling from the legacy landlord mindset. कि land है, land appreciate होगी, I'll make money, I'll probably make 30%.
They want to linger around 10 years in the same property.
And what we are seeing in the last year and a half, so markets recovered, every developer has again moved to the luxury housing.
Yeah.
Luxury housing does make them money, obviously make them.
But it'll take much longer to clear off.
Much longer to clear. That's not exactly the answer to that 100 million house problem. India would need probably 100 more Godrejes, 100 more Lodhas, 100 more L&Ts at a much prestigious, at the much larger scale, playing the mass market audience.
Yes.
And when I say mass market, India needs to build sub $100,000 houses.
So you're saying that all these manufacturers, aka builders, they are basically trying to optimize the value of the current land they have, as against saying let's increase the revenue and throughput.
Exactly. So no one is doing the dirty work. Ki I would build $50 billion worth of transaction value, but only at 10% margin.
Yes. Yes.
And
people are optimizing margin.
Exactly.
And the mindset is that I own this place.
It's
so
not.
Why not?
So I'll tell you an anecdote. Godrej, listed companies, but fine, we are not talking about anything which is immaterial information here. So there was a point in time Godrej became very aggressive on exactly the project management mindset, where basically they will sweep in as a brand partner. They will take all the end-to-end ecosystem risk, work on that margin profile, move on to the next product. Growth was very fast. Stock markets punished them.
Oh wow. Because their margins were lower than the peers.
But my thought process was, I think Godrej Properties was listed at the wrong time. It should have been treated as a startup, where it is building for the $50 billion revenue, and in that process, the margin profile will increase with the operating leverage.
But then this actually is a very good use case for a startup because you're not listed. You can take a longer view. It's a very good use case.
Very good use case.
Just asking, Tanuj, have you ever thought of becoming a D2C brand? No, you wouldn't do it.
The reason being, so again, whether thought has crossed our mind, whether on the real estate side being a principal or on the mortgage side being a lender, everyone wants to be an NBFC. We have told ourselves at this point in time what is our strength. Our strength is distribution. Our strength is marketplace. We have only solved for 1% problem there. We need to get to double-digit market share.
That makes sense. You need
analyzing
to
credit is not our
your lead, and maybe later, maybe. But to come back, right? I mean, how much money is there in the margin? Because what you're saying is people are optimizing margin, right? It's like very huge margins, which is not necessarily something that startups can capture, or the stuff that
which is why most of the manufacturers are playing the luxury segment. It's a huge margin. But if someone, again, I expect and I would want few young entrepreneurs to think about D2C from that perspective and thinking, can I build 100 housing projects in the next 5 years, raise enough PE venture capital with profitable economics, but not necessarily 30-40% margins overnight. Keep the cost low. Efficiency is more importantly. Supply chain. So supply chain efficiency no one thinks about. Like if you build the project in 24 months, vis-a-vis you build the project in 48 months, your cost overruns are huge, and that dents into your margin. So because we work with pretty much the entire industry, the problem is we don't see even a single person with that outlook even today.
True. Tanuj, what would be the reforms do you like to see from the government side? I mean, there's a little bit of noise, we talked about it. But what do they really need to do to attract younger people, to make it easier, and to also build? See, a lot of innovation has happened on finance side, for example, right? UPI and account aggregator and whatnot, right? They are now trying to disrupt the e-commerce space with ONDC yet again.
Right.
So a lot of innovation is happening elsewhere with the government, but realistically, like, just pay some lip service.
No touch zone yet.
Huh?
No touch zone yet.
No touch zone, yeah. But let's say that if the government had the will and the power to do something, what would you like to see? Like a few things that you would like
So
to see.
wish list, our wish list is
Yeah.
fairly long. I think 100 things could happen.
Hmm.
But immediately what could have the real impact? First of all, and it's a very basic thing,
Hmm.
every transaction has to be digitized.
Perfect.
You don't need of physical registrations of real estate. You don't need to stand in the queues for 5 hours and go through. So when there's a blockchain, let's use the blockchain. It will obviously make the entire ecosystem public, centrally connected.
Yeah.
It will throw up interesting opportunities for a lot of young startups to disrupt that space.
Yes. It will.
You were speaking about fintech space. Now, even though probably I think India has been one of the market leaders globally in the disruption it has brought into the fintech space, not much has been done on the secured side.
Secured side, no.
EKYCs, for example.
Yeah.
Now, let's say I'm integrating with an ICICI or an HDFC, and you as a consumer, now,
We've digitized gold, by the way, but we haven't digitized land.
you as a consumer is taking a mortgage. You're a salaried consumer.
Yeah.
Let's say you're buying a Godrej project, which is already funded by ICICI. Your legal technical diligence, blah blah blah, everything is done. Effectively, it's an unsecured credit.
It is.
We're playing on your credit history.
Yeah.
The banks can give a sanction, but banks cannot disburse a loan. I still, being an intermediary, I still need to come to you. I still need to get 200 pages signed. Still go through that couple of weeks of process to get that moving.
And after buying the property, I have to be very careful about the property papers, put them in a locker. Yeah.
So if you actually speak to anyone, what India is seeing and should continue to see is the first-time home buyer. So our average demographics is 30 to 40, which is an interesting demographic. 30 to 40-year-old buying their first house.
Yeah.
But if you ask anyone, the immediate answer, yeah, it's a cumbersome process. It's an emotional purchase. You get married, you buy a house. You have kids, you buy a house. You get your first job, you buy a house for your parents. But why not make it seamless? Why not make it an easy experience as well?
Okay. What else is on the wish list?
These two immediately, then a lot of controversial topics.
Okay. Tanuj, moving on, I think there is a lot of literature on what we'd like to see. I feel that the revolution that we are seeing overall, for example, people will say, oh, Indians don't want fancy luggage. You give it the price of, to me, they can't afford. But then you give affordable, there are now new luggage startups coming up, one right below our office right now, right? They'll come. Very interesting. And I think this is something that, I believe that if you had any startup intervention on the manufacturer side, that'll actually be a force multiplier for you as a platform also.
100%. So our limitation is also organized supply.
Yeah.
There have been a couple of instances where we did well in top 10 cities. We felt there was enough demand in next 20 cities. We went there was enough demand, there was no supply.
Yeah.
There was no organized supply.
Yeah. And this is, however, unfortunately, this is the kind of manufacturing business which you can't sit in Bangalore and do, right? That I think is a bigger problem for startups than reforms by the government. Exactly. You can't sit in Vivek Puramangala and do this business.
You have to be on the ground.
You have to be on the ground. Very interesting. So let's move on to how you build Squareyards. Right? It's not our usual storied unicorn that we see. Right? You haven't yet bothered to become a unicorn, I believe. Are you a unicorn or you haven't tagged yourself?
Who knows?
You are one of the few companies which is 100 million revenue though. Whatever it's worth.
Exactly.
That's the point.
So internally also when we set validations for us, 100 million was a benchmark we were chasing. Definitely, I won't deny that. Next benchmark is straight away 500 million.
Should be that way. Phenomenal. Because I actually wrote an article sometime last year saying that we should change the definition of the unicorn itself. Who the hell defined it as a market cap in a private valuation fundraise? That's not a unicorn. Let's define it as 100 million. So then that way you are.
Thank you.
I hope the press publishes a revised definition in list again. So
these are vanity metrics in any case. So one of the things I believe which has worked well for us is, and we'll talk about team and all that, but that thought process and which we were speaking earlier, that are we in it for the next 20 years or 3 years?
Yes.
I think that has changed the entire paradigm. Because when you think 20 years, you don't think about, oh, these are validation, you feel good for a day, but the next day is again day
Such a
zero.
beautiful concept, no, Tanuj? And I was speaking to some of my founders. I said, and you own a lot of your company. You go to IPO, pressure monkey of the back for the public private investors. And then in public markets, if you compound by 20%, just 20% a year for 20 years, it's 40 times. 40x growth on 100 million revenue will be phenomenal, right? It's 4 billion revenue. Then I'll say, okay, yeah, then you'll feel, okay, you've done something, created something lasting, and created an institution. And that will be worth it, right? I mean, then you have to look forward to 20 years. Otherwise, 20 years sounds too long. But then you see the impact of the compounding, then it's like really desirable, right? Then you have to set it up. But what you have done, Tanuj, is you set it up very beautifully, the company, right? It's a very capital efficient company. They have phenomenal ethos about your team, company culture. So tell us a little bit about how have you built Squareyards? 2014, 9 years, 100 million revenue. I mean, not too many company startups can claim that.
So we, like I was mentioning earlier, I think a lot of things we told ourselves should be very logical. We have always seen, and I used to track public companies, I was on the equities. One common thing I saw across successful listed organizations for multi-years, multi-decacons was the founding team. Not just the founding team, senior management team, if I were to precisely say it. How committed they are, how passionate they are, how hungry they are, and not just one individual.
Yeah.
It was a team. So I think in none of the organizations stocks I tracked, it was one singular hero who was above everyone.
It never works.
And so
some of us have tried that in venture capital also. It doesn't work.
So when we founded Squareyard, the first thing I did, and I always use this reference of Moneyball movie. In the next 18 months, I went back to the ground zero, met people, stalked people, convinced people who I could blindly trust. I think many I've read probably 8 out of 10 times, don't work with friends, don't work with spouses. I have a totally antithesis argument to that. If you are able to build a very strong, efficient team with people who you blindly trust,
should be
on hunger, efficiencies, buy-in for the next decade, couple of decades, there is no better founding team to work with.
Tanuj, I met your team member Piyush. I was so impressed, right? Like phenomenal ownership. We wouldn't think that he could replace you in the way he would think about the company.
So we are, not many people know, again, one thing which has flown under the radar, we are a 20 co-founder team. I think we are the largest co-founding team in startup ecosystem.
Wow.
You meet any of these 20, you could have any of them sit in this seat, almost the entire conversation will go in the similar construct.
I can imagine.
So none of us have quit, none of us have any side hustle. None of us are active angel investors. Each one of us wake up every single day wanting to build $100 billion organization. Our job, collective job, is to ensure all of us remain hungry. And we have gone through multiple hacks, cultural hacks, value system, meritocratic culture, transparency, corporate governance. So when I say corporate governance, it doesn't mean only from the investor's perspective. For me, corporate governance is also internal. That how transparent are you? Does everyone in your organization believe you are fair? The chances are fair. The growth opportunities are fair. Can an individual starting at the lowest rung in the organization become a senior manager?
Does he have the path?
So those things have we have been also lucky. I always say luck plays a significant role. You have to meet the right people. You have to be at the right place. And luck is significantly understated in everything we do.
You remind me so much of Jaideep Burman of Rebel Foods. I'll show you his podcast. So he also has 8 co-founders, and most people have stayed with him over a decade. Joined the early years of Rebel, and he'll say the same thing. Any of us could run the company. I just happened to be there.
Exactly.
Because I joined early, that's all.
Exactly.
And in fact, same thing, same ethos. And talking about Angel, 10 years ago when I started India Quotient, he was supposed to help me as a venture partner. We are close friends. And after 6 months, he said, Anand, my team is complaining that I'm spending too much time here. So I'm sorry, I have to opt out. I said, dude, we agreed that you'll help me. Yeah. He said, no, sorry. First Rebel Foods. He's actually probably done like 2 angel investments in his lifetime because they were very close friends. He said, it's not an investment, I'm just helping a friend.
Helping a friend.
He will never go outside his very close circle at all.
Not investing from the intention of making money.
No, nothing.
It is purely.
No, in fact, he confided to me that I am losing some money just because I have to bail out a friend. Most likely it won't work out, but I have to give something to the friend. That's all. And
so, like for example, we have acquired few platforms. The same ethos have worked there. So when we meet potential founders, our immediate thought process is कि can we marry them for the next 20 years? मतलब हम जो बाकी team है internally, like after any potential such acquisition meeting, we have this internal review meeting. हम ये बात कर सकते हैं दिल का अच्छा लग रहा है. He seems to be a good person. हमारे लिए बहुत बड़ा criteria है that we have to be working with people who have a golden heart.
भले घर का लड़का है.
Exactly. मतलब you can't be working with people who are manipulative. You can't be working with people who have an hidden agenda.
You can't handle them for 20 years.
You can't. Exactly. You can do well. So that's why star CVs historically haven't worked for us.
Yeah.
We have tried. We need humble people. We need people who are ready to change their views.
Star CVs are good only if you want to be the fastest unicorn. There they work.
But may not help you become a $100 billion organization. So that's effectively has always been my theory is, with all respect to the work-life balance, if you don't want to go out for drinks with people you work with, you are working with the wrong team. You need to like people who you are spending 10
Good
hours
definition.
at work with.
Tanuj, but I mean the argument against angel investing, for example, you own a lot of your company, right? Like majority owner even now? Almost
all 20 of us put together, 55%.
55%. That's phenomenal, right? And so hence you guys don't need to do angel investing. That's the argument.
So again, we genuinely believe that this is the most lucrative thing we are building. So me and Kanika own 40%.
How much capital have you raised to reach 100 million revenue, by the way?
We have raised 150.
You were 150, but you have diluted only 45%. How did you? This is like a very unusual number.
So we have never raised large chunks at one go. So again, we have not followed a lot of those management philosophy.
You haven't raised or you refuse to raise?
We refuse to raise. So like for example, even today, if let's say someone writes me a 100 million check, I'll refuse. I don't know what to do with 100 million. Why dilute? So we, again, age-old philosophy that equity is the most expensive thing in the world. You don't dilute unless absolutely necessary. That's been the ethos we have followed. So at various junctures, and we have followed, I think again coming back to luck has played its role. We have always been confident कि जब हमें capital चाहिए होगा, if you are building a good enough business, हमें capital मिल जाएगा. It might be a couple of weeks late. It might be from X instead of Y. But if you're building a good enough business, you will always get capital. We have been lucky that we have got access to that capital as and when we need it. And we have got access to a lot of smart investors. So these are the individuals who have excess value.
And these are mostly individual investors?
Mostly individuals, smart money though. Financial markets, again, private equity folks, public market folks, LPs, GPs, individual.
This is the only other person in India who would have done this playbook would be Nika. Right?
Nika, I was about to say.
That's all.
Only very similar.
But it's good to see you because, when I give this example to a lot of founders, they argue back saying, oh, no, Falguni was a rock star banker and all that. I mean, you were not even an Indian banker, so you were in Hong Kong, right? And you were much younger. You were not you're not heading a big unit. And so you would be like a typical founder in 2014.
Going and meeting, cold call, meeting these guys.
You would have got a lot of offers or interest from investors to write big checks to take 20% of your company, 30% of your company.
Acquisition
What was your thinking? Acquisition offers, merger offers. How do you think through those?
5-minute deliberation in the interest of corporate governance, informing the rest of the team members and saying in the similar breath, guys, this was just an information. Let's move on. So like, for example, me and Kanika, we own like 40%. We still keep on buying every few months, whatever liquidity we have. So it has been that belief. So none of us have monetized. None of us have sold even a single share. There's an internal dictate that none of us will for another 10 years.
Wow.
We are very, very clear that we don't...
No, but this, Tanuj, people say that you have to take $10 million out in secondary as soon as possible.
Do what with that?
I don't know. I mean, it never used to happen like that, but now my fellow investors are toppling over themselves to offer this secondary to people. Right? What do you think?
Our theory is that after
you raise 150 million, not taken anything out.
Not even a single penny out. Single penny out. So, and we don't need to. So all of us are paid decently enough to run our homes nicely.
In my world, I mean, ideally this should be like the big headlines. Nobody has taken out any money. 20 founders.
Not even a single
Nobody has
penny.
needs 5 million
In our
security.
entire history, there has not been even a single secondary trade. Not for us, not for the investors.
But like people say that founders need safety. I don't know, 10 million is like the minimum safety check.
You still need I'm saying that you don't. Part of that is also lifestyle. Part of that is also all of us are humble enough that we don't need a lot of capital.
Wow.
Marginal utility of money collapses in any case beyond a certain point in time. So what are you doing it for? What are you building it for?
I haven't figured out what to do with 10 million. Yeah, I don't know. I agree. It stops after buying a house.
You have a house, you have a car.
That's it.
You might buy another car, but
that's it. Yeah. Very good to know. But this must have come from the need to pad up on capital. Forget for personal ends, but even for business, right? That needs a lot of planning, efficiency, the way you think, the way you want to execute. So how did that come about?
So it has been a combination. I won't say it's just a frugal mindset, which a lot of people might answer. We have had our losses. We have had our mistakes. You said we are capital efficient. I don't think we are capital efficient. I still believe we should have done this, built this in 75 million in 6 years rather than 150 million and 9 years.
Understood.
We are smarter after the fact.
Right.
Every year we think, oh yeah, we did something stupid last year. We should not repeat that. But I think what has been key to our whatever we have done, and if we define that as a success, is ability to identify where we are going wrong very early. Look at those early success and early failures, double down on early successes, have no egos, pull back from early failures. So just we have not done anything which might pay off in 10 years.
Got it. And you're saying that early failures, because you don't have any plan linked to early failures, you're happy to write off earlier. You do experiment.
We do.
But then you take it back quickly.
All the time. And let's say if it has been my baby, 3 months we realize we are not heading in the same right direction. And a lot of this is due to execution, not strategy. And we might not have executed that well. We might not have had the right team, not in the right market. There's no comms, and I'll admit in front of everyone, yaar, ye galat decision tha. Let's pull back. Don't put good money after bad money. So.
And Tanuj, not having a board of storied investors who will offer you secondary exits and valuation, how has that been different? You have a lot of friends who are founders.
We believe it has been the best thing which has ever happened to us.
You don't miss the advice of these people?
So we always have advice because we are talking about marquee names on our cap table. These are effectively LPs in most of the funds.
Right.
People don't get access to them, and we have every quarter dinner, lunch, or breakfast talking about the business with these guys who have been there, done that, build businesses. But what is different is no one is forcing these advices down our throat. Not having a celebrated VC early in our life cycle, and we made a lot of mistakes in early parts of our evolution, has allowed us to learn, make mistakes, and learn on our own. I think which has given us much more confidence, much more control over the various moving parts of the business. I think, I believe, and I could challenge, we as a founding team would be one of the best and one of the most intrusive, operational management team with operational handles on what's happening in the business. Micro metrics, everything, moving parts of the business, which has allowed us to do that. So I'm not saying that is for everyone to do that, but in our case, partly because of the sector, partly because of the stage we were in, it has worked to our advantage.
So you talk about this number culture, right? Like it looks like a very sharp eye. Is there a separate structure that your team, part of your team, which is tracking metrics, or everybody is into numbers? And
glad you asked that. For example, a lot of people apply from celebrated startups. Yeah, I want a strategy role.
I know.
मेरा आंसर होता है हमारे यहाँ ना कभी स्ट्रेटेजी रोल था ना कभी होगा. No one will ever get paid for strategy.
Okay.
It's a pure execution.
You don't have a chief of staff.
We don't have any chief of staff. We don't have any chief strategy officer. We don't have any singular individual who does not have a pure hardcore execution role.
Okay.
So there are 18 CBOs. I expect every CBO to be micro driving every
18 people are CBOs.
So
most of the founders are CBOs only.
Most of the founders are CBOs. So they are micro driving their individual part of the business segment. They are expected to know anything and everything about that business. I have sharp reviews with them every 4 days. The first thing I do when I go to office is look at data. It's like I have some 20 dashboards, every single business unit, what's happening, what's not happening. That helps me plan my day. But in our culture, execution eats strategy for breakfast. Like if you're not executing, everything else is overrated.
And you know, this, like, some of these things you would have learned, right?
Still continue.
As you were forming the culture of the company, there will be multiple inputs, right?
100%.
About philosophy, capital, particularly strategy, and you were in a competitive space. It's not non-competitive, so some of that can also create extra tension, right? How do you guys sort of do you like take a long-term view, saying this is how we'll compete, this is the culture component, and how we'll compete, this is the ethos component? Do you discuss, or it evolves organically?
Both. So specifically about competition, it's a very dichotomy. One fine day we shut our eyes down to what competition is doing and continue to believe in what we are building. Another day we are also aware that what is working for which competitor.
Okay.
So we need to be aware enough to know not to ignore anything which is working in the industry.
Right.
But at parallel point in time, have confidence that our execution, our people, our management team is very different, and that's our unique mode, which people won't be able to replicate or have not been able to replicate. And the same problem statement, two of us are building, we might do it better than them because of this strength. And we have been following that. But you're right, so it's a constant evolution. We continue to change our culture. We believe, and there's again an internal statement, we are a very different organization every 2 years.
Okay.
We are actually a very different organization. Well, if let's say you spent a lot of time internally 2 years back and you come and join Squareyards today, you will find, oh my God, it's a different organization.
Give an example.
Culture. When I say culture, it's related to whether how employee centric or consumer centric we should.
Let's say work from home.
Very good example. Work from home तो खैर हमने starting से ही नहीं किया.
You never know.
We believe that you can never build a culture work from home, and culture was very close to us. So in 2 months after COVID, we were back to offices. We got fined multiple times. We were still working from offices. Our theory was very, very clear. We will be less efficient if we work from home, irrespective of whatever the tech ecosystem.
You didn't want to be employee friendly and culturally.
That's what I'm saying. So our version of employee friendly was, unless we are growing, unless we are able to solve for a lot of things, we will never be employee friendly in any case. But so this is not, but I'm just giving you an example. So thanks to COVID, or because of COVID, we had to implement certain practices, variable pay, for example, all those things, in ensuring we continue to remain afloat, we continue to make money, because we were in any case, we did not have 100 million in the bank. We could not depend on the VC capital. We had to make our own dough. But at the right time, we realized that the market has changed. We are losing talent, some talent which we should not have lost because of that culture. Overnight, we changed. When I say overnight, it's actually overnight. It's overnight. We wake up on the right side of bed and we decide from tomorrow we will follow a certain culture.
Got it. Got it. And but Tanuj, I feel that overall, lot of companies which had less capital, they have emerged much stronger out of the COVID shock.
Okay.
Right? People who had more capital, they just were still chasing vanities about, being employee friendly or being, friendly in this way, that way, investor friendly. But the companies which were already used to less capital, they have gained market share, they've become stronger, and they've sort of been able to tweak much faster.
So I'll give you an example. Abhi, over the last 12 months, a lot of large unicorn startups have been talking about profitability, cost cutting, and showing impact as well. When we read those news, यार हम परेशान हम देखते हैं कि 6 महीने में how can you change everything related to operational profitability in the business? Either you were doing something drastically wrong 6 months back. So it has led to couple of internal discussions. यार हमें भी कुछ I think we might have some flap somewhere.
Can we do something in 6 months?
So, but we have not been able to find. So then the answer is, we still need to do it the hard way. Margins continue to improve, but our margins have not swung from minus 40% to plus 10% in 3 to 6 months.
As a CEO, you are like pressurizing your team, saying, dude, those guys became efficient. And your team is saying, oh, we are already efficient.
So we can't find any flap which we can cut. We can't flaps on consumer acquisition cost, which we can cut on the people we could cut. Which now I realize is a good sign, which means that I'm not saying we do not make mistakes or we have not overbuilt for a certain period of time, but there has not been many excesses per se.
Phenomenal. So, Tanuj, very clear that you want to take the company to public markets at some point, run it forever, and hopefully sort of keep building.
Keep building.
Are you seeing the business in terms of market share as a direction, or are you seeing that you will probably add other verticals like some of the stuff that you talked? Do you have a plan, or you're saying okay, we'll see when the ecosystem develops and you take a call at that time?
The last part. But parallelly, we think industry, again, coming back to the opportunity, is so large that for us not to become XYZ larger, we would have done something wrong as a management team in terms of the execution. But internally, again, we keep on saying, if we ensure we exist in 2035, we will be 20, 30 times larger. Just by ensuring we don't do anything stupid, we continue to exist. Our ability to execute will provide a delta on the top of that if you are able to execute much better than what probably the peers are doing. But at the same point in time, like you mentioned, do we want to continue running it? Yes, hopefully I would still be having a coffee with you in 2035 in the same role. But at same point in time, all 20 of us keep telling ourselves and everyone around us that none of us are entitled. I am being paid a salary. I happen to own equity, but I have a designation. I have to be the best individual to do that role. If I don't do that role well enough, I should be replaced. And same goes for everyone else.
That brings us to the end, Tanuj. I felt proud at the beginning that I'm introducing a fellow alumni, but I'm feeling even prouder after this call. We've spoken so many times, but this is again revealing. And probably we could capture a lot more than what we've spoken in person. So it's good learning for me, right? I love to sit. So let's start the rapid fire, Tanuj. If something is very controversial, you can skip. Hopefully you will not skip. So tell us, what alternate career would you have picked if not building Squareyards?
Travel blogger.
Travel blog. Wow.
Not many people know. My obviously cohort knows. I use post working with Squareyards that has reduced. I have been to almost 100 plus countries.
Wow.
All 7 continents. So some avid traveler. Used to be an avid traveler.
And you were the person who's in a housing startup, but loves staying in hotels. That's such a contradiction. It's good to have some hobby outside work, right? Yeah. So, what is the first thing you do when you come to work?
Open dashboards.
Data. Phenomenal. Weirdest, funniest moment or request from a customer?
Without taking his name, we had a very funny consumer story. It was a few years into our journey. I think we would have been a meager 4-5 million revenue. There's a gentleman who comes with a large checkbook that I'm gonna buy 100 flats in Lodha. My team takes him around. So for the next 7 days, this gentleman, supposedly billionaire, is carrying his checkbook, going around with every developer, meeting developers, founder and management team, and negotiating for 100, 150 or 50, and we internally are celebrating. It's a matter of time. It will, एक transaction say our revenue moves
double
up
your GMV.
20%. Then we realized, so you can take the gentleman, Hari Bhai, effectively, that gentleman had been doing that for the last 5 years.
Oh my God.
Hobby है उनकी. तो internal, अब क्या होता है? So that was a very big learning, because we told ourselves, our business cannot be built on large deals. हमें डेली का कुआं खोदना है, डेली का पानी पीना है. So we tell ourselves that we celebrate our retail transactions in a much more ferocious way than a large institutional transaction.
It's a good point, right? It's just SMB startup chasing a mythical enterprise tie-up, right? So it never happens.
Exactly.
What is the highest value property you sold through Squareyards?
$10-12 million.
Wow. Which city?
Dubai.
Wow. Okay.
India would be close to 2 million. That's about it.
Is it still like which one has higher demand, ready to move or under construction?
Under construction.
Right now under construction?
Under construction. By a distance.
By a distance?
By a distance.
People are comfortable with under construction.
People have become more comfortable with the RERA coming in, those regulatory changes. So it would have been a very different answer 5 years
Good
back.
to know. How frequently do you go to the website and look at product features and all?
4 times a day.
4 times a day.
Not enough still. I'm still not, I believe I'm still not obsessed about our product. I should be. And that's a very honest, candid admission to make. But I believe that I wish I was Steve Jobs. I wish I would be.
I'll tell you, Deep Kalra of Make My Trip, I had the privilege of seeing him often. He's one of our LPs in my fund. He was also obsessed. Or he said, "What do you do?" I keep looking at the website and keep finding
Exactly what I miss. I believe I could build that DNA.
Phenomenal.
I wish.
What was your proudest moment at Squareyards?
So I'll take one example, but normally it is when we feel we have impacted someone's life. So in this case, for example, there was an individual who started off as an admin resource in the organization, but a very hardworking chap, and kept on growing in the organization. Eventually, and when that person joined us, he was in huge debt, did not have a house of his own. His parents were in huge debt. This individual has not just paid off everything. This individual today owns 5 houses,
Wow.
owns 2 cars,
Wow.
and I remember when the first time he was buying a house, he picked up the phone and called me, "Ki Tanuj, I wanted to call you first." And what you feel at that point in time is unparalleled.
I agree.
100 million revenue cannot give you that.
For me also, if a founder comes back and says, "Anand, you mentioned this, and this worked," and I feel more proud than everything else that you achieve personally.
When I was telling that, I still felt goosebumps. So that feeling is
way better than selling 100 properties to Hari Bhai, right?
Exactly.
Most challenging moment in the journey so far?
Many months when we were wondering where to pay the next month's salary bill. But one particular moment stands out. So we have ensured that the culture, irrespective of whatever happens around us, our salary time is 7th to 10th of every month. Okay. Irrespective whether the clouds fall down, earth breaks up, you still pay salaries on time. 40 of senior people took personal loans individually, all of us, to ensure the entire organization gets paid on time.
Phenomenal. Very rare to see this, and great. I mean, I can now see why you're so proud about your team. 40 people took personal loans. Wow.
So it was not just founders.
I know.
It moved beyond founders, founders. People stepped in. So.
People let go of salary, but people taking personal loan to bail out the company is phenomenal. Who's the most inspirational Indian founder for you?
Narayan Murthy and the team.
Okay.
So Murthy sir. So we believe what they have. It was not just one individual. Effectively, it seemed as like that when we were young, but eventually what we realized,
to be only one. Yeah.
The institution they built, the entire founding team, the entire management team, they continue to impact the entire corporate culture in India, practices in India. I think that's been phenomenal. We look at them and we tell ourselves, yeah, we need to become Infosys of real estate over a long period of time.
They've been synonymous with, building institutions in New Age India. They are not multinational and they're still better than the most others. Many phenomenal choice pick. Favorite Indian startup?
Not one, but respect for many and for multiple things. For example, Zomato for how they continue to execute, they continue to innovate. Nykaa for how they raised capital, that influenced us definitely. Someone like a Lenskart, I think what they have done phenomenally in gaining market share in such a fragmented market influences. Zerodha obviously for the economics. So it's a combination. We keep on learning these things from each one of these are building.
So I know you want to go for an IPO, but let's say a big M&A offer comes in.
100% refuse.
100%.
Not even an iota of thinking back on that. So irrespective of a number. So
now, like, you're not selling your company. What role would you like to do forever? Because at some point your team will grow up and...
Exactly what you said. So I believe my basic role is to create 100 more Tanujas. That is exactly what I tell my leaders. So my favorite statement to my leaders is, hopefully you will never leave us. But the day you leave, your 50 people should leave with you. If you quit alone, you were never a great leader, in my view. So you need to influence people around you. You need to ensure they become a larger version of themselves, a better version of themselves, not just as a leader, as a human, as what you are building, how you are trying to build. And I believe if we continue to do that, we believe we have partially been able to do that, and certain degree of success, continue to do that, I think we are in a good space. Phenomenal, Tanuj. Again, great round of rapid fire. It was not very rapid, but let's rapidly wind up and brave the Bangalore traffic. Thanks, sir. Urban infra देखते हैं थोड़ा सा. Thank you. Take care.